According to Anglo-Saxon records, Viking raiders struck England in the year 793, storming Lindisfarne and attacking the monastery that housed the relics of St. Cuthbert. The invaders killed the monks and seized valuable treasures. This raid marked the beginning of the Viking Age of invasion, made possible by the longships that the Vikings used. There were sporadic acts of violence along England's northern and western shores during the last decade of the 8th century, as Viking raids continued on a small scale in England's coastal towns. While the early raiding parties were small, they are believed to have followed well-planned strategies. The Norwegians changed their tactics between 840 and 841, launching winter raids instead of their usual summer attacks after waiting on an island off the coast of Ireland. In 850, the Vikings spent winter in England for the first time, on the Isle of Thanet in Kent. Again, in 854, raiders wintered on Sheppey Island at the mouth of the River Thames. By 864, they had returned to Thanet to set up another winter camp. In the following year, the great heathen army, led by the Viking brothers Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan, and Ubba Ragnarsson, as well as another Viking king, Guthrum, arrived in East Anglia. They marched across England to Northumbria, capturing York and establishing a Viking settlement in Scandinavian York, where some Vikings settled as farmers and craftsmen. Most English kingdoms, already in turmoil, were unable to resist the Viking onslaught. By 867, Northumbria had become part of the Danelaw, after being conquered by Halfdan Ragnarsson and Ivar the Boneless, who installed an English puppet king, Egbert. In 870, the Great Summer Army arrived in England, led by the Viking chieftain Bagsec along with 5 jarls. With the combined strength of the great heathen army, which had already conquered much of England from its base in Scandinavian York, Bagsec's forces, and Halfdan's troops, the united Viking army launched a series of invasions throughout England until 871, when they planned to conquer the Kingdom of Wessex. On January 8, 871, Bagsec was killed in the Battle of Ashdown, along with his jarls. As a result, many Vikings retreated to northern England, where Scandinavian York became the center of a Viking kingdom. However, Alfred the Great successfully defended his realm and ultimately drove the Vikings out. Alfred and his successors continued to repel Viking incursions, eventually reclaiming York. A new wave of Norwegian Viking invasions hit England in 947 when Eric Bloodaxe seized York. The Viking presence persisted throughout the reign of the Danish king Cnut the Great, 1016 to 1035. But after his death, conflicts over succession weakened the power of his descendants. By 1012, Viking forces were actively involved in England as the Thingmen army, serving as an elite guard for the English king. They were offered Danegeld payments, which lasted from 1012 to 1066, and temporarily halted Viking raids for nearly 20 years. However, Viking influence dwindled until 1066, when Norwegian invaders suffered their final defeat at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Just 19 days later, England faced the Norman conquest, as the Normans, who themselves descended from Norwegian Vikings, defeated the weakened English army at the Battle of Hastings. This marked the definitive end of the Viking Age in England.